I am Dr. Dorothy Njiraine, Lead Researcher, Women's Economic Empowerment Hub, University of Nairobi. In this video, we are going to focus on Wambui, Kanyi. Tell us about your role in the constitution-making process.
The constitution making and the role that women did was like when you look at a fabric. You know, when you look at a fabric, no single thread can say, I did a greater part, because all of them are important. And so the different roles that women were playing. For me, I had the technical skills in terms of analysis, so I would like analyze, I would do research, put information together, together with many others, that the information on the issues that as women we needed to have in the constitution. So research became very basic for us as women. Then there was the issue, for example, when you get this information, how do you utilize it? Now that we had CKERC, our next agenda was to ensure that women understood the issues throughout the country. And so what we used to do was we could have meetings at the national level where we bring all the different organizations. We could bring women from the grassroots, the different parts of the country, Kisumu, Mombasa, and the eastern, call it where, every part of this country, so that every woman would be having the issues that we are saying. When the commission comes and they are collecting the views, these are the issues. And we tried to identify what I would call the national issues for all the women in Kenya. So if we talk about the issue of affirmative action, it affected every woman in this country because women did not have the right to get into leadership. The issue of land, the issue of GBV. So we would like select what are the issues that affect every woman in this country. But again, we knew that if I go to a particular community, there are other issues that affect women in that particular community or region. And so what we would say is that we have the general issues which all of us as women, we need to address. But when you come to your specific region or your specific community, there are the issues which also affect women in that particular community or region. So you add them onto those ones that we are saying, we as women, we have to ensure those issues come up. So in addition to the technical, so we would train, we would call the women, sensitize them. So we let them know that these are the issues, develop materials, for them to be able to carry, and so that they are able to refer. They have the issues with them. We would do the lobbying and advocacy, where not all of us would have the skills. It also, as I said, we had different skills. We had different social capital among the women. And so we knew if I go to somebody like Honorable Phoebe Asio, she has these people, so she is able to contact those ones. We shall go to Honorable Julia Ojiambo, she has this contact. We go to, so every woman became very, very important. When I go at the grassroots, the women there know whom they can contact and try to lobby and sensitize them with the different issues. So as women, we worked together from the national to the grassroots. And there was that very strong link between the women, vertically and horizontally. And I think that is one area where women, in terms of influencing the constitution, we worked very much together and united. Come the time for the hearings. I remember, like at the Collaborative Center for Gender and Development, what we would do, we would identify, based on the legislation for the constitutional review, it had said that for an issue to be taken on board, it had to come like from about a third of all the constituencies in Kenya. Because the CKERC, we are going to the constituencies to hold the public hearings. And so what we did was to ensure at least we were going to at least a third of the constituencies in Kenya, and ensuring that we have sensitized the women there, we have mobilized the women there, and they know the issues, and that they will turn up to go and make the presentations. At times, we would go monitor just to ensure that they have been able to come, they have gotten the opportunity to make their presentation, and so it was a very coordinated sort of exercise. And then about the women whom we worked with, actually, let me say we worked with almost all the women's organizations, because all the women's organizations had converged on the issues of the constitution. All the women politicians at the time, Honorable Gilu, Honorable Mother Karoa, Honorable Wagari Madai, Honorable, all the members, Honorable Alison Cheraite, all the members of parliament worked together with the women. All the women commissioners worked together with the women. Women in the academia worked closely with the women's organizations. And what I would say is that every woman who was able to influence worked together with the women. And so that's why I say the achievements were the achievements of all the women of Kenya, whether you were at the national level, whether you were in the commission, whether you are in the women's movement, whether you are in the academia. So it was women working together. So we had people like Honorable Phoebe Asio, I said the women members of parliament, women commissioners. We had Professor Wajiko Kabera, we had Salome Muigai, we have the former, the one who took over the CKERC chair, Abida Ali. We had all of them. We had people like women like Rukia Subo, Salome Muigai, and many others who worked with us to achieve what we were able to achieve, and to ensure that each of them were moving the issues of women in wherever area they found themselves. We also had men who worked with us. I just thought of, for example, this one was one of the men. He was called, he used to offer us technical support. We had somebody like Nyegenye who would also offer us the technical support, and many other men, even those who were in the commission, Guy, PLO, Rumumba, among even the commissioners who supported us, and even the male members of parliament. Because when it came the time of identifying what was referred to as the contentious issues, otherwise women alone could not have made it. We also needed the men to support us and ensure that our issues are not picked up as contentious, which we knew we could not be able to push if they were selected to be contentious. So we had a lot of support. I would also say we also had a lot of support from also the donor community who worked with us. And particularly, let me say when they allowed us to be very flexible. So even if they were giving you programs, they allowed you to focus on issues that were pertinent at the particular time. So you could just pick a phone, call a donor. I remember by then we were working with organizations like HBF, organizations like FES, among many others. And you could just pick a phone and you say, though we had the program which we had set like this is happening, can we just make some adjustment so as to address the current issue? And the flexibility actually enabled us a lot to achieve what we did.
What stages in the constitution-making process did women influence most?
I think for me, I would say, because this was a process, and so each and every stage was very, very important. You miss one stage, it is like when you have a relay, you are holding the baton. If it is not reached to the next person and carries it properly, it falls, then that team loses. So all the stages were very, very critical. Because when it came to making the law that was to guide the constitution-making process, women were very, very active. First of all, to ensure that the legislation provided for affirmative action at every stage. So if it is at the stage of the constituency level, we had the forum at the constituency level, it ensured that there had to be at least a third women affirmative action. If it is the commissioners, again, it provided that they had to be at least a third. If it was the Bomas delegates, it provided at least those who were appointed by the different institutions, like at the council level, the defunct now council, if it was at the NGOs, if it was the religious, the people whom they were given to nominate, they had to comply with the affirmative action. Because if women did not influence that law, it would mean that then they would be marginalized in the subsequent stages. So if it is at the civic education, women needed to carry a lot of civic education, particularly in understanding the society, or even the other women, particularly at the grassroots, understand why is it important even to participate in the process. Why is it important for us to push for those issues? So if it is the time for the collection of views, we had to make sure women came up and made the presentations, either oral, either verbal, because if they didn't make the presentations, then it would mean their issues would not have found their way into the CKRC reports. So to me, so throughout the process, whether it is even at Bomas, women there played a very instrumental role in terms of safeguarding what had already found way into the draft constitution. So if at any one stage, women were not there, at CKRC, the women commissioners did a lot of work in ensuring that at every sitting, the issues of women were not removed or were not left out. So even during the hearings, the public hearings, I know the women commissioners did a lot of work because as we know in this country, when you have a public forum and women come there, many of them could not have a memorandum. And when many of them would come, maybe they would just sit and listen. And to them, they have gone and participated. But the women commissioners knew our socio-cultural context. And so they would know women may not speak in public. And so how do we sort it out so that women are also able to air their views? It was to take them aside from the main forum so that they are able to speak their issues. So to me, the participation of women at every single stage was very, very critical because it influenced what was going to happen in the final outcome. Yes.
Thank you. What did you do to ensure that what women wanted was adopted into the Constitution?
Okay. One thing, there was what I call the unity of purpose. Women were united on this particularly single agenda. the issues to do with the women. These are the issues to do with the affirmative action, the issues to do with the right to land, the issues to do with the GBV. That is what now we keep calling the gains that we have in the Constitution. So women had sort of consensus, but that consensus had to be established. So there was a lot of consultations, there were a lot of meetings held by the women, either women at the national level, women at the grassroots level, so as to enable them understand, or let me use the word, conscientize them on those issues and why it was important to have them in the Constitution. So having this sort of unity of purpose, agreeing on the issues was very, very important. And as I said earlier, this was a vertical and horizontal. Women at the top, women at the grassroots, women we are talking in one voice. There was also the issue of a lot of capacity building, awareness creation and capacity building. Because for women, they must understand. You enhance their capacity, even to go sometimes to appear before these cameras. You know, they'll go and find their cameras, then you know they'll shy away. So, or even speaking in public, you have to build their capacity, enhance their capacity, so that they even have the issues, which to me is part of capacity building. So when you conscientize them, these are the issues, this is how you articulate them, because they are important to you, and they internalize them. That is capacity building, because they understand why, for example, why do we need affirmative action? Why do we need the right to land? How does it impact on women? How does it impact on the society? And even not women alone, but even men, because even men, when they understand, they could also come and support. So there was that issue of awareness creation. There was also a lot of lobbying and advocacy. And in this, let me say, as I had mentioned earlier, that we were identifying what I would call the social capital among the women, in the sense that if we needed to lobby somebody, if I picked the phone myself, that person may ask, who is this girl calling me? But we had to know which among us, the woman, is it that if, for example, let me just use an example, if we wanted to go to see somebody like Honorable Raila, and Honorable Phoebe Asio just picks a phone, can I have a cup of tea with you and some women? You just agree. If it is the other person, so one, it was to identify the social capital. So which woman is linked to who? The social capital, that if we wanted to take our lobbying to that person, this would be the gate opener. So we don't go and the person does not even know who are you people. So it is somebody familiar. That is what we call the social capital. Then in addition to that, then we had even to identify who are those influential people in what particular area. So you identify the key persons who, if you go talk to one, they have that ripple effect. They are going to influence others. So you don't just go to everybody. You need to know who has influence, so that when you go to that person and you make that person buy your agenda, then you know your agenda will get a lot of support, because they are going to also have their supporters also support your agenda. And then the issue of women working together. You know, we all have our diversities, you know, in terms of ethnic, in terms of religion, in terms of region, in terms of politics. But at least when it came to women's issues, I think all those diversities sort of melted away, and we had the women, and the women focused on their agenda.
What strategies worked for the realization of the gains for women during the constitution-making process?
I think I'll somehow repeat myself a little, because what I was saying is that the strategies was, one, having a common message. And so every woman Whether you are going to your political party, you are going with the common message. Whether you are going to your institution, you are going with the common women's message. So having that common message, that was one very strong strategy. Then, and that is part of the women working together, the unity of purpose. Because that is what now we are all united by one purpose to ensure that women's agenda find their way, or with the women's agenda find way into the constitution. That was actually the agenda. And then we had those issues which were critical. So, and then the lobbying. And you had to get the right person, so you don't waste your energy on somebody who is not going to have any influence. And then you utilize the social capital among the women. And let me say, not just the social capital, let me say, because at times it was even financial. I remember there are times like when we did not have donor funding and the process had to go on. At times we would go to caucus where we had Deborah Okumo as the person who was in charge there, the director. So we would hold our meetings there. So despite not having donor funding, things would not stall. If we are not holding our meetings at the caucus or at the alliance, at the Women Political Alliance, we would hold the meetings even at individuals' homes. I would want to give credit to our late Kamla Sikad. I remember we had many meetings at her home in Westlands, where she didn't mind the number of women who came there to meet, and she would ensure you don't only have a space for meeting, you have lunch, you had all the meals, and she used to make for us very sweet and nice banana cakes. So you'd take the tea with the banana cakes. So what I'm saying is that women do not just utilize the social capital, they utilize their skills. Those of us who were researchers, so you utilize the skills in carrying out research. Those who had the connections with the influential people, may they even be MPs, maybe members in the government. Actually, we had access to everybody as women, and it is because of this social capital. Those who had the resources in terms of finances, in terms of space, then they provided their space. So these were some of the key strategies that we were using.
What challenges did women face during the constitution-making process, and how did they overcome them?
At times, let me say, there were many challenges. As I have said, for example, the issue of not having finances. So you can't go to a hotel to hold a meeting. So how do you overcome that? You go, for example, at the caucus, you hold your meeting there. The caucus will provide the tea as you go ahead with your meeting. You go to somebody's home, like Kamla Sikad, may she rest in peace. You have your meeting there. So sometimes you have the financial constraints, which were a major constant challenge for the women. Other times you also have the issue that this process took a very long time. I remember at one time we held a meeting at Bagadi, and one of our members was almost crying. Our grandparents struggled for this. Our mothers have struggled for this. Actually, this was called the Lusegidaiga. And now we, the children, we are going to struggle for this. How long will this struggle come to an end? It took too long. And when a process it takes too long, sometimes, people tend to get a burnout. But women would always come back together, pull themselves together, and keep moving. At times, it is when the process seems to stall. It is not moving, and that is completely not in the control of the women. So women would always try to pull back together, try even to go lobby. As I said, we had women from more categories. So there are those who would even reach those who are influential in terms of even having the process pick up once again and continue. So there were some challenges. We also had challenges as women internally. And I wanted to say, as I said earlier, we have diversities. So, we have the ethnic, we have the religion. I remember like there is one time when the Muslim women wanted to have the Qadhi court in the constitution, and Christian women come and say no. They wanted to bring the Sharia law through the back door. And so like us now who are dealing with all of them, it was first to understand it from the Muslim woman, why the Qadhi court is important for the Muslim women. And so they will make you understand that this Qadhi court is not Sharia, it is not the Quran, but as Muslim women, without the Qadhi court, to us, we have nothing, because Qadhi court is supposed to address the issues of marriage, divorce, and inheritance. And because it is not followed strictly, we suffer. And that is why we would want it to be in the Constitution. So now it is you who is there in between to go convince the other side. Qadhi court is important for the Muslim women. And when the Muslim women gain, Muslim women are Kenyan women. So it is a gain for us women. So sometimes you would find there are those challenges internally because of our diversity, and then we could address them like that, make the side which is trying to object understand why that is important. We also even have the clause of exemption for Muslims. And it is because, again, we had to understand it from that perspective of the Muslim woman. You put yourself in their shoes, you try to understand it so that you are able to make the other side understand. And so in terms of addressing those internal issues, and then we tried to avoid anything that would divide the women. Because now, us being the ones who were also there, like at the center in terms of the women's movement, we together with all the women. So if we are divided, then we won't be able to move together. So the issue was to try to avoid anything that would be divisive and hold the movement together and be targeted. That is, being targeted on the agenda that has brought us together.
What are the most important gains in the Constitution, especially for economic empowerment?
Women made tremendous gains in this Constitution. Let me start even before we go to economic, particularly the affirmative action. I think every woman in Kenya at the time, we were very passionate about the affirmative action, because as I told you at the beginning, affirmative action actually had been brought by Phoebe Asio. It did not pass. It was brought by Honorable Bethy Mogo. Then it couldn't be implemented. Then Honorable Mother Karua had come up with the 50 seats for women. They didn't pass. Then again, we bring it in Parliament. And so women, we were very, very passionate to ensure the affirmative action passed, because we knew, come what may, if we don't get it in the Constitution, we better just forget it. So I think, to me, when it comes to the issue of representation, that was one major gain, to have the affirmative action in the Constitution. We have many, many other gains. We have, for example, the issues of addressing cultural practices that discriminate women, and anything, either a person or institution, forbidding discrimination against women. To us, it was a major gain, because I think women had been discriminated for long. I know we have not yet realized it, but at least having it there, we know we can push for its implementation. Then we have like Article 43 on the social and economic rights. To us, that is a very, very big gain for women, because they address the issues of the basic rights. The right to education for our children, and basic education. I think that one is a tremendous gain in terms of, in most communities, girls would be left out, where boys would be educated, of which for us we didn't want any, either the boy child or the girl child to be left out, but at least all of them to get the chance to acquire education. Then we have also the right to learn. I think that is very, very important in Kenya, given that most of the land, people get it through inheritance. And our inheritance in most communities is patrilineal. So it is inherited through the male line. So what happens to the women? Sometimes if we even know today, many women, even when your husband dies, you are chased away, you cannot go back home because your brothers already shared the piece of land your parents had. So to us, women also work on land. And one issue is that they don't have control over the land they work on. Either you have access rights, you have user rights, but you don't own and control. And to us, it is the owning and controlling that you can be able even to say what you are going to do with a piece of land. Because it is yours and you have control, you can go take a loan in the bank. You can decide what to grow. You don't find yourself in the streets. Because if you don't have the land and you are chased out either by your husband, and when you are going back home, your parents have already shared among your brothers, what happens? You find yourself in the streets. And actually, those are some of the things that we never wanted to see in our society. When we said that every child, whether a boy or a girl, have a right to land and to inherit. Then there are also the rights in marriage. When it comes to property, if you are parting, you have equal right to the property. These are some of the major gains which are in that constitution and which are actually aimed also at promoting women's empowerment.
What lessons can we learn from women's mobilization and negotiations during the constitution-making process?
There are many lessons that we can learn from the women of Kenya during the constitution-making process, and particularly having an issue or an agenda that you are pulling together to support. Because we say that, like now, people may say today that we don't have the women's movement. The women movement is there. It is only that if it is, for example, Maendeleo is doing its work. We have an organization like CRU, it is doing its work. We have an organization like SOREC, Social Reform Center, it is doing its work. So the women's organizations are there, but each of them is doing their own work based on the objective of the founding of their organizations. But they don't have like pulling together on a common agenda. And I think what we see during the constitution making is that despite the women's organizations being individual entities, they pulled together on a one common agenda, and that was influencing the constitution. And so whether you are dealing with the, let me take, for example, the rights of women, and there are many, then you bring those rights to address them and ensure they are anchored in the constitution. If you are dealing with the issue of women's representation, you ensure that you are pulling together to ensure those rights are in the constitution. So you, as women, you are pulling together to influence the constitution. And then after that, I think after we had the issues in the constitution, I think then everybody went on to do the things that they normally do. So that having that one agenda is very, very important. And also the unity of purpose, or being united, that we don't pull apart. So we have agreed and we are all pulling together, despite our diversity. So regardless of where you are, either at the top, at the bottom, we are all working together, that kind of unity where, and then we are able to utilize the strength of each one. So if you are a researcher, you conduct the research, and that research does not remain with you. It goes to the next person. Maybe the next person will pick that research, develop lobbying and advocacy materials, And then that person who developed those materials then takes them to the one who is going to lobby. So it is like a chain. And so each of the pieces in terms of what that chain does is very, very important. And so you are able to utilize the skills, the talents, the strength of each and every woman. And that is why, to me, as I look back today, we cannot say that there is any one person who did more or any single woman, because it was all women working together and each one utilizing their skills, their knowledge and talents towards one common agenda, influencing the Constitution. So I think that is very, very important, whether you have the social capital, whether you have the social resources, whether you have the skills. So we utilize all those skills in the interest of women. Yeah.
Chele.